there have been at least 17 cases of killers crying crocodile tears. Some people, like Vincent Shilton, even staged their own media appeals.
Come home. Or if you don't want to come home, just phone somebody. Just let us know you're all right.
For the watching public, it was an emotional plea for the safe return of his missing girlfriend, 23-year-old Lisa Blunt, the mother of 4 young children. But Shilton was lying. He'd already killed Lisa in a drunken brawl and taken her body to a nearby wood where he'd soaked it in petrol and set it alight.
Just let us know you're all right.
But police arrested Shilton and he confessed. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 8 years. Mitchell Quay went one step further and mounted his own media campaign when his wife and the mother of 2 young children disappeared.
One day, either Lindsay's going to walk into a police station or someone's going to see Lindsay.
Quay was the #1 suspect, but publicly protested his innocence, even appearing on This Morning.
Obviously, the question has to be put, and I know what your answer's going to be, but, I mean, did you kill her?
No. No, I just wish someone had listened to me. No one has listened to me since this has begun.
After 15 months, he took his publicity campaign one stage further.
I will not stop until they either apologise to me or I get compensated because I think I deserved it. I've been branded a murderer in this town by them.
But in the end, Quay couldn't keep up the charade. After 36 hours of police questioning, he finally cracked and confessed to Lindsay's murder. He led police to where he'd dumped her dismembered body. He was jailed for life. Many killers think their lies will somehow hoodwink the police and watching public alike. They may believe their tears will save them. They may believe they can ride out the storm. They may even court the limelight, hoping to deflect suspicion from themselves. But in some cases, it's the very appeal they make that leads directly to their downfall.
The children of Robert Wignall, grief-stricken and baffled by the brutal murder of the father they loved.
I can't find any motive whatsoever why anyone would have done this. I've never known my father to raise his hand or even argue with anyone.
Addlestone, Surrey, and a romantic walk in the woods ended in murder for 55-year-old Bob Wignall. Bob had gone with his wife Sandra to feed some fox cubs when he was attacked and stabbed several times in the chest. Sandra managed to escape. They'd been married for less than a year.
It's one of those things where everybody says that he's a nice guy, and he genuinely was. He never got upset with the children or his grandchildren. Absolutely idolised his grandchildren.
Bob had been distraught when Rose, his wife of 30 years, had died of cancer. But then he met Sandra, and on Christmas Eve in 1991, they married.
I think everybody was genuinely happy for Bob, that we really thought that he'd found a little bit of happiness again.
Sandra gave police a description of 3 men she said attacked her husband. Senior Investigating Officer Pat Crossan was called to the scene.
So you looked for a motive. Was it robbery? Was it revenge? Was it an argument that had got out of hand? But there was no information leading to any of those. So it just appeared to be a motiveless crime.
It's beyond belief. You can't take it in at all.
I've never known my father to raise his hand or even argue with anyone.
You seem to be on automatic pilot through the whole thing. It's as if you're living somebody else's life. It's not your life anymore.
I would urge anybody that even thinks they might know something to come forward.
Bob's 3 children, Debbie, Denise and Dean, took part in the appeal, but Sandra was too distraught.
Now, you've got to understand that it's a very daunting thing for people to go before the media. They're not trained for it, they're not accustomed to it. And so you cannot make a judgment about why people do or they don't participate.
She was now part of our family, and she'd been through this terrible thing. And we tried to help her deal with her grief as well.
A month into the investigation and with police looking for new leads, a crime appeals program staged a reconstruction of the murder using actors. Sandra agreed for her voice to be used in the appeal.
We were standing talking, and from behind Bob's back, I saw these three boys.
Have you seen a puppy boxer, mate? No dogs round here, I'm afraid.
They just seemed to appear from nowhere. I thought one of them was coming after me, that I actually ran to the bottom of the motorway. I didn't know what to do. I was absolutely terrified.
As a result of the appeal, police received dozens of calls, but one in particular stood out. An anonymous caller told detectives they should be looking not for 3 men, but 2. He made another startling claim.
He was very, very persistent in saying that it was Sandra Wignall was the key to solving this crime. He made a significant comment to me that she was an evil woman, and that if I had her followed, she would take me to the address where these men could be found.
Bob Wignall had been stabbed to death while on a woodland walk with his wife, Sandra. The man investigating the murder, then Detective Superintendent Pat Crossan, had been suspicious of Bob's wife, Sandra, from day one.
Robert Wignall was murdered near the spot where I'm now standing, and his body was dumped about 10 feet behind me. There were certain inconsistencies coming through. First of all, how did she find the body 10 or 15 minutes later in a dark wood, some distance away from where the attack had taken place? Why, for example, did she not run off in the opposite direction, where there were lights from houses, to seek help?
The police mounted a surveillance operation to follow Sandra Wignall. Sandra's secret world was about to unravel. Police discovered that just 9 days after marrying Bob, she was back with a former lover, Terry Bewley.
The relationship with that man was such that she would do anything that that man had asked her to do. If he said to drive naked to a given spot, she would do it. He invited other men to have sexual relationships with her in his presence, and she agreed to that. She obtained money, legitimately I might add, and gave it to him. She was totally besotted by him.
The police investigated Bewley's background and uncovered some alarming details.
Terry Bewley was a cold, cunning, and calculated individual who had a previous conviction for murder.
Police were convinced that Bewley was involved in the murder. They also discovered that 3 months after marrying Bob, Sandra Wignall had persuaded him to take out a life insurance policy for £21,000. But Bob had begun to suspect his wife was having an affair. He confronted her about it just a week before he was murdered. Police followed Sandra Wignall to Bewley's house 50 miles away, where they arrested the pair and another man, Bewley's lodger, Martin Hughes. When questioned, Hughes admitted being the anonymous caller. He had recognized Sandra Wignall's voice on the appeals program. She was a regular visitor at Bewley's house.
When Bob and I actually got together, he was such a different person. He, you know, reverted back to his old self, and everybody was thrilled to bits.
Hughes was also able to give police the identity of a second man who he said attacked Bob. Harold Moult. Police arrested Moult, who made a full confession.
He told us about how he and Bewley had disposed of clothing, and in fact where he, Moult, had disposed of a knife in a canal in Birmingham.
Bewley and Wignall continued to deny any involvement in the murder, but Moult's confession had given police the proof they needed. The pair were charged. Bob's family was shocked, but had begun to have their doubts about Sandra's story.
There were times when you thought, you know, she must know more than she's letting on.
You feel quite bad upon yourself for thinking them.
Sanity, or what you think is sanity, kicks in, and you think, well, that's just ridiculous to believe that she would have done this. Why would she have done such a terrible thing?
She actually sat in my kitchen discussing how she was going to spend the money, how she'd promised her daughter a horse. I suppose you're in shock yourself, and you don't want to believe, you desperately don't want to believe that she could possibly be involved.
Sandra Wignall had not wanted to take part in the police press appeals. She feared showing her face would help people link her to Bewley. she only reluctantly agreed to use her voice, but even that was enough to trap her.
The motives for this murder, said the prosecution, were lust and greed. Sandra Wignall claimed her husband had been attacked by 3 youths for no apparent reason. The story was, said the prosecution, complete fiction.
This woman was portrayed in the press after she was tried as almost, virtually a prostitute. And we had absolutely no knowledge.
Sandra lived a totally double life. We just weren't describing the person we know. It still seems unbelievable.
In November 1993, Terry Bewley, Harold Moult, and Sandra Wignall were jailed for life.
In a dramatic sense, he had signed his own death warrant when he married Sandra Wignall. She lured him into that wood with the sole purpose of somebody killing her husband.
When Bob and I actually got together, he was such a different person. He, reverted back to his old self, and everybody was thrilled to bits that he'd met me, and everybody was very thrilled when we got married.
It's incredibly difficult to understand how you could possibly move about all day long knowing that that evening you've planned to murder someone.
Jean Dado faced the cameras after her husband had been shot in an apparently motiveless murder.
I would just like to say, anybody out there knows anything or has seen anything that could help find whoever shot my husband, would please come forward.
52-year-old financial advisor Terry Dado was shot at point-blank range as he opened the front door of their home.
And I just heard the pain.
Dado's apparently heartfelt appeal was a sham. With the help of Roger, her son from a previous marriage, she had made an incredible 11 attempts on her husband's life before finally succeeding with a hitman. With her marriage in trouble, she had not wanted to share the nest egg she and her husband had built up. Dado and her son were sentenced to 18 years for conspiracy to murder. The hitman was jailed for life. 10 years on, Dado still maintains her innocence. A personal appeal from victims' family or friends can maximize publicity, but it's a daunting experience, and people react in different ways, whether guilty or innocent. West Yorkshire, and a quiet rural town was rocked by the sudden disappearance of 23-year-old Linda Fleming, a trainee pharmacist. Linda, who lived with her parents, had failed to turn up for work. After 24 hours and with no news of her whereabouts, her father reported her missing.
She loved her family, she was devoted to her family, and seemed to be much closer to Dad than to Mum. She was Daddy's girl. She loved her boyfriend, Stuart. They were going to get engaged.
6 days later, and with still no clues to go on, Linda's boyfriend, Stuart, father Derek, and brother Stuart appealed for information.
Was she depressed for any other reason?
No. Linda was not depressed. And I do not want anybody to even think that Linda was depressed.
For the gathered journalists, it seemed an all-too-familiar routine. Many were fearing the worst.
The press conference took place at a time when there'd been quite a few briefings where members of murder victims' families had given conferences and had turned out to be the killers. So we were looking at all 3 of them and wondering which one of them might be the murderer.
Linda, wherever you are, or for whatever reason, please come home or just ring. We all love you and we want you home with us.
None of us suspected Derek for 1 second, and we certainly didn't suspect his son Stuart. So we were all looking at Linda's boyfriend thinking, was it him?
She was down at my house, and Mum and Dad knew she was there. She was staying over. She would even ring to tell them she was staying over, even though they knew she was there.
Whereas Derek had been crying and was shaking and was visibly upset and obviously devastated, Stuart was very straight, very calm. There were no tears.
The appeal was disappointing. It brought no new leads or sightings of Linda. Police stepped up the search.
So far, an extensive search by mounted police, tracker dogs and the force